Welcome back. All right, so whoever coined the phrase patience is a virtue, probably not from Vegas. Just going out on a limb there, probably not from Vegas. And patience has not been the name of the game in Vegas. The jersey I'm wearing is a good example of that, where there was some patience about how to do the gold jersey. But I remember when they talked about, well, they wanted it to be gold, I thought, well, they'll have to figure out a way to put a layer of fabric underneath it so it's not all scratchy on the inside. It's all scratchy on the inside. So, but that's the impatient part. That's the we want to get this out. We want to get this done. And with the Stanley Cup, that's kind of where we're at too. Cup in 6 years. Bill Foley said that before they had a player, and everybody looked at that and went, "Well, that's not very realistic." And now here we are, where the team you can argue ends up being disappointed, even though they reached the Final Four, even though they were one of the last four teams standing in the playoffs. You can still look at this season and say, "Well, it was a success." And yet it was a disappointment at the same time. And you can have both. You can have a season you look at, you go, hey, they won 40 out of 56 games in the regular season, 40, 14, and 2. That's a success. But then you can look at the playoffs and say, it didn't end the way you wanted it to. That was a disappointment. So they beat Minnesota in the first round in 7. They beat Colorado in the second round in 6. And of course, many, myself included, looked at that series and went, this is kind of like a Stanley Cup final preview here, the Colorado and Vegas. And then on the other side, you had Tampa Bay and Carolina, and that was probably at that same level. And now, as I'm recording this, we're going into a Game 7 between the Islanders and Tampa, where Tampa looks vulnerable. So losing in 6 against Montreal, what it exposed was, yes, they need to beef up their team down the middle. And it's been an issue, and they went out and they spent a lot of money on Mark Stone. Stone's been great. He's their captain. He's going to be there for a long time, but he's not a center. And they do need to fix things down the middle. That being said, I really like William Karlsson. I've always liked William Karlsson, but he's the second line center ideally. First line center was Chandler Stevenson through most of the playoffs. Chandler Stevenson is a very good player, but is he a first line center on a team that's going to win a Stanley Cup? Well, this year the answer is no, and the answer going forward, it'll be interesting to see how they fix this. So, in the Cup in 6 years mentality, you would have to think that changed when Vegas was so good that first year. That the owner had to look at that and say, man, 6 years might just be conservative. Maybe we can do this in 4 or 5. Maybe we can do it in 3. So after 4 years, that patience that already wasn't where you would think it should be for an expansion team, it's not there, and it's not going to be. So the easiest thing to do would be to say, well, Peter DeBoer's the problem, but if you've had a team that's been in the Final Four or beyond 3 times in their first 4 years, and you go through 2 coaches in those 4 years, there's something to be said for continuity. There's something to be said for that. And I'm not sure that it's all on the coach here. That is the easy target, though. The easy target is the coach. When you see a team that's not performing on the ice, you can say, well, it's the team or just the coach. And if it's the coach, that sort of absolves the players of responsibility. And I don't think that helps the players. I really don't. I think that's something that's a message you really don't want to send the players. Like, nah, it's not your fault. It was his fault. So there's going to be some self-reflecting going on for the Vegas Golden Knights today, a day after losing against Montreal. Their special teams tells the story. During the regular season, their power play was 17.82%. It's not good enough, but in the playoffs, it got a lot worse, 9.3%. Their penalty kill, 86.81% during the regular season, and the playoffs, 71.8%. So that's a major issue right there. Those two numbers add up to 81, approximately 81. Between the two of them. You want 100 just to be average. During the regular season, they were at 104. During the postseason, around 81. That right there tells you part of the reason why they can go out golfing today and not have to worry about their conditioning for at least a few weeks before they'd have to get back in the gym and start working on it. That being said, most hockey players now work out 365 days a year kind of thing. And I would expect that for Vegas, this result will not be one that they're happy with at all from the top down. They're pending unrestricted free agents. There's some ability here to maybe make some things better, but Thomas Nosek, I thought When he played, I thought he was decent. He's bottom six forward. I would think they keep him. Matthias Janmark, I don't know. Do you keep him or is he a pure rental? Probably a pure rental, right? Alec Martinez, excellent for them during most of the playoffs, if not all the playoffs. His shot blocking's great. He puts up points. But they do have a cap crunch, and it's a matter of whether or not they can move some money around. The idea of Marc-Andre Fleury going, I mean, that's the dream, right? That they could find a taker for Fleury's contract that last year at $7 million and have that money to spend to improve things down the middle. I'm not sure that there's a big market right now, though, for Fleury. And even so, it's selling Vegas fans on the idea of trading Fleury. For some, it would be sure, fine. But man, that would not go over well, especially if Vegas got off to a bit of a slow start next year. Also noteworthy, Reed Duke, the first ever Vegas Golden Knight, is a UFA this summer, and Jimmy Schultz, who a lot of attention was paid to them signing him, and he played a handful of games for Vegas over the last couple of years, and now he's a UFA this summer. I would not be surprised to see Schultz go. I'd be kind of surprised if Reed Duke doesn't stick around, though. I'd be kind of surprised if they don't re-sign him. Pending RFAs, the only one they have that I could find is Dylan Coghlan, who played a handful of games this year. Looked pretty good. We'll see how things go for him next year. They're 22 and under class. Nick Hague, who I thought had a good year. I was actually kind of surprised he was getting rotated off their blue line. Cody Glass. So, Cody Glass, Nick Suzuki drafted the same year, and they decided to keep Glass and trade Suzuki. Maybe now's the time to give Cody Glass a full-time spot. With Vegas, because the expectation is Stanley Cup, I think that's part of the reason why the kids have been kind of held back. And we haven't seen them getting the opportunity because the pressure's on to win as much as possible. Glass needs to be given an opportunity to show whether or not he's going to be a top six center. If he's not going to be a 1-2 center in the NHL, they need to figure this out soon because they don't really have anybody right now that looks like they're ready to seize that role with the team. That's how you end up with Chandler Stevenson playing top minutes, right? And Peyton Krebs, who I think will have a chance to play the full season next year. Vegas needs to be a little faster, a little more unpredictable, a little bit younger. Their 32 and over crew, Max Pacioretty, who had one goal in the series against Montreal. And I'm sure there are Habs fans out there that will say, well, there's some poetry to that because Pacioretty throughout his career, he's put up a lot of goals during the regular season, and then in the postseason, you're kind of left wanting more, right? Alec Martinez, 33 years of age, so if they do offer him a contract, you would think it wouldn't be a long-term contract necessarily, probably 3 years. Ryan Reeves. Now, here's the thing with Reeves. So the last couple of games that they played, I said, they notice when Reeves isn't in the lineup. And I understand that Ryan Reeves is not a great player, but he offers them something that they don't have on the rest of the roster other than maybe Carrier. And it is that physical aspect. It is that agitator. It is that quality that when it's not in the lineup, it affects the rest of the team. So if Reeves isn't going to be brought back, if the plan is that they're not going to bring him back, and the way that he was a healthy scratch in the last couple of games tells me that if Peter DeBoer is coming back next year, and you would think he has to, they've been in the Final Four twice now in a row with him as coach, you would think that Ryan Reeves is probably gone, but you have to go out and find somebody like him. One name that comes to mind is like Brandon Lemieux in LA. They acquired him from the Rangers. That kind of a player. Now, if that player can also put the puck in the net here and there, then you've got something there, right? But they need that. They need that agitator in the bottom six. They need some of that sandpaper they don't have, as well as that depth down the middle. That I admit, they definitely need to work on that. Nick Holden, probably gone. I would think Nick Holden's probably on his way out. And then Marc-Andre Fleury, again, we'll see what happens with Fleury. And with Holden, I understand he's not an unrestricted free agent, but I think they're going to be trying to make some room. They may very well be calling Seattle. They are exempt from the expansion draft, which, when you've spent $500 million on your team and it's only been 4 years since you came into the league, I understand why they're exempt. It's not the first time the NHL has exempted a team from the expansion draft. It happened the last time around too, where certain teams were exempted. But yeah, I would not be surprised if Vegas is at least calling Ron Francis and looking at their cap situation, trying to figure out which veteran player they might move out to Seattle in exchange for. I don't know. Do you give them a draft pick as well? For Vegas, we'll see how things go. But again, it feels like they need to get younger, a little bit faster, and a little bit more unpredictable. Top scorer during the regular season was Stone, 55 games, 21 goals, 40 assists, 61 points. In the playoffs, a lot less effective. The most remarkable thing about Stone was he was a -3 against Montreal. He is their defensive forward, right? He's the guy who was nominated for the Selke. He's supposed to be elite, and he was during the regular season, all the turnovers you could imagine. And during the playoffs, it was great until they met up with Montreal. And then it just didn't happen. He had no points against Montreal. In fact, their playoffs leading scorer is William Karlsson, who didn't have a goal in the semifinal against Montreal, but he did have 5 assists in 6 games, and he was a +3. 19 games played, 4 goals, 12 assists, 16 points to lead Vegas in scoring in the playoffs. Their top goaltender during the regular season, Fleury, 26, 10, and 8, 928 save percentage. I also give him credit as their top goaltender during the playoffs at 9 and 7 with a 918 save percentage. But in the conference final against Montreal, Leonard did have better statistics than Marc-Andre Fleury. Their 5 seasons, they don't have 5, they got 4. So their last 4 seasons, this year they had a .732 winning percentage at 40, 14, and 2. Of course, they lose in the semifinals against Montreal in 6. Last year, 39, 24, and 8, a .606 points percentage. They lost on the conference finals against Dallas in 5. The season prior, 43, 32, and 7, a .567 points percentage. Their lowest is a .567. Round 1, they lost against San Jose in 7, and that was a series where they had a 3-1 series lead. And that's where they can't close out a series storyline comes from. It starts in 2019 with that series loss against the Sharks. It continues in 2020 with their inability to put away. They didn't put away Chicago their first try. They didn't put away Vancouver either. And again, you can look and go, well, Crawford and then Demko, right? But there's always that balancing act between, okay, so how much of this is that goalie being really good and the other team making him look really good? And somewhere in the middle, you probably find the accurate assessment. So in their first year, 51, 24, and 7, 665 points percentage. And in the finals, they lost in 5 against Washington. One thing I have said about Vegas since that first year is that first year they had this chip on their shoulder. They were the misfits. They were the players that nobody wanted. They were the players that got picked up by Vegas and were cast off from other organizations, and they wore that. This is no longer a team of misfits. This is a team of, in some cases, very highly paid players that were brought in to play for the Vegas Golden Knights, who maybe they're not as hungry as that 2017-2018 team. And it is that, like, if you took that Stanley Cup Finals team in 2018 and you compared them on paper with this team that just lost against Montreal, this team's more talented. This team has more guys who may make the Hall of Fame than that expansion team that first year. But heart, you can't measure it. And it just feels like as the years go by, Vegas becomes more and more skilled. There's less of the hits being thrown around. And they're kind of getting easier to play against. And that's the tricky part for Vegas. They have to find a way to become hard to play against again. And maybe moving away from this whole finesse thing. So you do have to fix center. Absolutely, yes. But some of the finesse they have out there, it's great and all, but if there's anything we've learned in these playoffs and in the playoffs the last few years, you have to be big. You have to have some experience, but you also have to have your young players. You have to have a good mix. And you just have to be tough to play against. You have to be that team that the opposition's rolling their eyes and going, man, what do we have to do? And Vegas didn't have that air about them against Minnesota. They did against Colorado by the end of that series, but then you get in against Montreal and it's gone again. So I don't know how you fix that. But again, they have to find a way to get back to that desperate hockey in their first year. Because Seattle's coming into the league and they will have that same mentality of we're the players the other teams didn't want. I have a contract that they didn't want to pay, so they got Seattle to pick up my contract because they think my contract's crap. I'm going to show them. And that's the kind of attitude that Seattle will have that Vegas had, and they don't now. Their best contracts going forward, they do have some very good contracts. William Karlsson at $5.9 million until 2027. It's a long contract, but it's not like he's old. He's not into the 32 and over. And he's still one of the best, I think, second-line centers in the league. And I'm saying second line because ideally that's where he should be playing. That line in that series against Montreal was their best line. And arguably was their first line. But if they're going to get over the hump, they need to be the second line. And Shea Theodore at $5.2 million until 2025. That's a steal for what Theodore brings them. With Theodore, with Pietrangelo, they've got really good defensemen. I think their overall defense core is good. I do think it could use some improvement, but this is where that starts to hurt. The loss of Suzuki to Montreal, which directly bit them in this series. I do think that they're going to wish they had thrown Brandstrom into the deal they used to get Stone. Brandstrom could very well be a regular in the Ottawa lineup next year, and the kind of defenseman that Vegas could use, where there is some offensive talent there. He's rounding out his defensive game and projects to be a solid top four defenseman in the NHL. So, again, Cup in 6 years. That was the plan. And we're going into year 5. It'll be fascinating to see what they do during the summer, because I do think some work needs to be done here. And I don't think the problem is necessarily behind the bench. I say necessarily because I understand it will always come back on the coach when they lose. That's just how sports work. You blame the coach, you blame the goalie. And if you don't want to blame them, you blame the referee for how the results turned out. And in the series against Montreal, there was legit blame to be put on Chris Lee. I thought Kelly Sutherland called a more consistent game, though, than Chris Lee did. And I thought it was more fair. The officiating by the end of this, I thought, was far more fair than it was in the beginning. But or at least especially in Game 4. But yeah, we'll see what happens with Vegas this summer. I don't think they can make major changes, even if they wanted to, because of their salary structure and because of where their weaknesses are and what they would likely get offered up for some guys if they made them available. But it'll be interesting to see what they do this summer. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, this channel's been around since before Vegas started. I do have, there's a soft spot I have for Vegas for 2 reasons. One, my wife and I like to go there on vacation. We are friends with a lot of Vegas Golden Knight fans. And 2, I did, witness the channel's growth as Vegas comes into the league and did pretty darn well. And it was fun to watch that first season. But in games, do I actually cheer for Vegas? Not usually. I just, obviously, there's going to be a soft spot for me because I know as many fans as I do from Vegas. And it is interesting to watch a team develop from its first year on. So I'll have that experience with Seattle this year as well, and I'm looking forward to it. And they're going to be in the same division as Vegas. Going to be fascinating. Let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.